What is your personal encounter with the paranormal, ghosts, aliens, sleep paralysis, glitch in the matrix, etc.? I don't believe in ghosts or paranormal connections and shit, but this one really baffles me to this day. Happened a couple of years back, and I still can't forget it. Warning, story is kind of a downer. Also, sorry that it's long, but this is about as condensed as I could get it. Most of my friends have had trouble with substance abuse throughout their lives. Just the crowd I hung around with, I guess. Around the time of this story, one of my closest friends was clean off H for the longest they had ever been, a couple of months. But still fantastic progress for him, and things were looking good. We were hanging out one day and he gave me some great news. Since middle school, he and his mom had been fighting for a medical malpractice lawsuit that happened to him when he was younger, and they won. He got something like 15k out of the deal. So most of what we talked about that day was just how he was going to buy his mom something nice, and how he was going to use that money to finally go to college. I honestly hadn't seen him that happy in years, and it was great. A day or two later, I was sleeping like normal when all of a sudden I woke up at around 1 in the morning. I felt great. In fact, I felt absolutely euphoric. I felt like I was laying in the sun on the most beautiful summer's day in a puddle of 1,000 puppies. And that was just the first second. The next second was that multiply 1000. And the next second that multiply 1000 as well. Within moments, however, I went from "this is pretty nice" to "oh shit, something is seriously wrong." Before blacking out, all of a sudden I was walking down the stairs to my friend's basement. It was absolutely destroyed with shit thrown everywhere, and empty bottles and syringes laying around. He was sitting there waiting for me on the couch with tears in his eyes. He just kept repeating that he was sorry and that he didn't want to hurt anyone. He said the money didn't last him long, and he's back to being his broke ass self. That he was sorry for bringing me there, and that he just needed to say goodbye to someone before finally saying goodbye to me and everything. Fading out in another wave of euphoria. Me being logical to a fault and pretty straightforward, I woke up the next morning thinking, damn, what a weird dream. But not much else of it. Wrote it down in a dream journal I was doing at the time, and completely forgot about it. Ended up going to work and class like normal. Then a couple hours later, my friend's mom called. She called me to break the news that my friend had passed away that night. Overdose. It wasn't until a couple of months later, when another friend of mine, also ex-addict, was trying to console me by telling me how he went out with no pain, and how it was probably the best way to go, when things started to get really weird. He started to explain to me what an overdose actually feels like, the overwhelming euphoria, and how it's impossible to explain to someone who's never experienced it before, i.e. me. It was then that what he was describing started to sound really familiar, and I went to my phone, opened my dream journal, and started reading the entry from a couple months back to him out loud. He pretty much said, yeah, exactly that, where'd you get that story? And told him the whole thing. Both of us were at a loss for words, and I still am. As I said, I don't believe in this stuff, and if someone told me this story, I would say they were high as fuck. But it's a memory that I will never forget. My mum's experience with what she thinks was a ghost. She went outside around 10 p.m. for a cigarette years ago and saw a very elderly woman walking up our neighbor's back stairs to their veranda. Mum said she wanted to ask if she was alright. It was very rare for our neighbors to have visitors that late. They were also elderly, but Mum said she completely lost her voice and felt stunned. Though she couldn't look away, she ended up getting out a hello and the woman just disappeared. The next morning, Mum made a joke to our neighbors asking why she wasn't invited over for their nightcap with their visitor, and they very casually replied, "Oh, so you've now seen our ghost too?" They were excited over it and not at all scared. Berry, neighbor, says an elderly lady follows Elwin, his wife, everywhere, and they feel pure comfort around her. But their own children and grandchildren are frightened by the lady on the stairs when they stay. Before my grandpa passed away, he had always been telling us how, after he had died, he would appear to us in his white clothes and watch over us. He passed away from cancer when I was 8. The years passed, and I was a very unhappy kid, undiagnosed autism, sexual assault victim, So at age 14 I tried to hang myself. It failed, thank God. As I was drifting away, my grandpa's image appeared to me and told me this wasn't my time to go yet and begged me to wake up. I did wake, lying on my bedroom floor, and I ran downstairs to my mum, crying, telling her what I had done. She went upstairs shortly after to clean up the ropes and told me much later that it looked as if they had been cut clean with a knife. After that traumatic event, I began seeing things. Puffs of mist outside in front of my bedroom window. When I was 16 was the first time I actually did see that it was my grandpa, just floating in front of my window. I tried to talk to him a few times. I asked him why he couldn't come inside. He responded that he couldn't because my mum had asked him not to. We spoke about a few things on occasion. When he mentioned the day where I tried to take my own life, he told me he tried to save me by cutting the rope and then went to check on me a few times. One time, my younger brother apparently saw him slip into my bedroom and got scared. After which my mother apparently went upstairs, asked my grandpa that, if he was there, to please not come in anymore as he was scaring her son. I decided to tell my mum about all this and took her out for dinner. Told her everything. She was shocked and amazed and confirmed that she did tell her father to not come inside and that was why he stayed outside. I'm just glad she believed me. I have since had more traumatic experiences with the paranormal and have shut myself off to their influences, but I still remember the events with my grandpa vividly. We joke about the girl who lives in our house. My wife insists that she was a victim of a fire in the schoolhouse in the 1870s that was on our property before the house was built. We've never seen her, but there is the occasional door locked or unlocked, or the errant attic light on, and so forth. Not a presence that is very strong or overbearing. There was one time though, when my wife was in the kitchen, and I was coming down the stairs, and we both heard "You're a good girl, Dottie" coming from the living room. Dottie is our dog. Trouble but a good girl to be sure. Apparently there is one more person besides my wife and I in the house who agrees. This is more glitch in the matrix maybe. Years ago, I went to a friend's Halloween party and, right after walking in the door, I saw this guy across the room. Immediately recognized him and thought, oh my god, I haven't seen you in years. Waved in excitement and he did too with the same fervor. After I made my way across the room and we began talking, I slowly realized that I wasn't sure I knew him. As we both tried to figure out where we had met each other, we realized we had never met and didn't have any friends in common. He was at the party somewhat randomly through an acquaintance. I thought it was just me with this feeling, but he swore he knew me too. After chatting for a bit, that feeling faded and I had no feeling of familiarity anymore. Even typing this story out doesn't do the feeling justice. It was so strong, like revisiting a place you've spent a lot of time but haven't seen in a long time. Anyways, we figured out we didn't know each other, had never met, and were both somehow mistaken. I figure we must have been best friends or lovers in another life. I'm not really sure I really believe in past lives, but it was such a strong feeling that I've never felt with anyone else, and that I'll ever feel again, and cannot explain it all. Anyone else have this happen? Mine isn't scary in the slightest, but I like to think of it as a weird glitch in the matrix. One summer afternoon, when I was younger, my family heard the music of an ice cream truck coming down our road. Ice cream trucks never come down our road. We ran outside and placed our orders and expressed our astonishment to the woman inside. "Really?" she said. "I come down this road every week." "Sure you do," we all responded. She drove off, and we never saw her again. I'm sure it was just a mistake on her part, but I like to think there's an alternate reality where we get ice cream trucks down our street every week. The better version of reality, to be sure. Many years ago, I was about to walk out of my locker room with my books, and for some unknown reason I stopped. The second I thought, WTF am I doing, and went to take a step outside, a window pane fell from 4 stories above me and shattered 2 male in front of me. I was so shocked and thought that would have made an absolute mess of my head if I hadn't stopped. Still don't know why I stopped to this day. Weird. Dad was out with his GF about 2 hours away from home, and I had the house to myself. I was showering about 7 hours before I expected them to return, and I heard our garage door open. It had a very distinctive sound due to the way it echoed through the kitchen and across the open plan tiled house. Immediately heard the clicking of his GF's boots and knew it was her from how short she was compared to the rest of the family. She walked like she had to prove something to make up for her height. She was definitely saying something to my dad too as she entered, and I could hear him say something back. Since it was so early for them to be home, I had a feeling something was off. I was already basically done with my shower, so I hopped out and threw on a towel, opening the door and looking down the hall and across the house for them. I absolutely pulled the horror movie rookie move of investigating in a towel, walked the length of the house, saw the gate outside was still closed, opened the door to the garage and saw it empty, and even did an extra loop to rule out me missing something. I was 100% home alone still. This wasn't the first time I'd heard something home alone. It was just the most distinct. My whole family has heard the slider doors open. When I went car shopping with my dad, my sister heard the garage door and the door into the house from the garage open. No one came home then either. My dad has seen people on the property at 3 AM, but they are gone without a trace and too fast for a real criminal to be snooping. The house just makes noises that imitate us and aspects of the home. The walls don't bleed though, so we still live there. Consider subscribing if you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more of Reddit Universe.